The circle of existence, also called the circle of order or the SMAT circle of order, allows those qualified to indeed review the past and look forward into the future. Sound right reason, Nupu, the best mind of the one supreme being, absolute nature, and the proper contact with spirit beings who were there when past events happened, give one qualified the hindsight needed to reconstruct the past to the extent needed for mental order, and mind power necessary for mental life and nature education. The proper understanding of the SMAT circle of order gives one the insight needed to do the framework of origins and progressions of the circle from one point or degree of the circle of order, counterclockwise around on the circle, and back to the same point at the beginning. To make a long story short, where the SMAT circle is concerned, the past is the future and the future is the past, in the sense that the circle of existence goes around and all persons, places, and things exist on the SMAT circle of order. The word SMAT is the acronym, first letter of each word, for the word space, matter, and time. Therefore, the SMAT circle of order is same as saying the space, matter, and time circle of order. This order circle is 720 degrees, because the top half of the circle is the zone of heaven and life, and bottom half is the zone of hell and also death. The two opposite halves exist in the same place, which is everywhere but at opposite times. The SMAT circle is divided into 4 equal quarters by a vertical line and a horizontal line. The first quarter, the beginning quarter, is called revolution and is the bottom right quarter of the circle. The second quarter is called origination and is the top right quarter of the circle. The third quarter is called origination and it is the top left quarter of the order circle. Whereas the fourth quarter is the bottom left quadrant of the circle and is called evolution, which is the most negative quadrant of the whole SMAT circle of order. The SMAT circle of order rotates counterclockwise, opposite to the hands of a clock. The evolution epoch is only 1 quarter, the fourth quarter, of the SMAT circle of order, and like the other 3 quarters, it is a time period of 18 millions of years. We never hear anything about the other 3 quarters of the Great Time Circle, because mundane scientists would have to deal with origins and progressions which would start with conception and birth of the universes and the persons thereof, who was the progenitors of the African race, also called the Ethiopian race, and scientists of other ethnic races are not ready to admit definitely that the Ethiopian race was first on planet Earth and the original cultivators of the whole world. Whereas Caucasians do use the terms civilized and civilization, members of the African race must use the education words cultivate and cultivation instead, which alludes to true culture. The original flesh and blood gods and goddesses, who first inhabited planet Earth during the top half of the SMAT circle of order, had visited and inhabited all land areas of Mother Earth before they became extinct and eventually metamorphosed into other peoples and animals. But, before they died out and became other persons and also things, they sexually procreated the African race, also called the Black race, and this is hot. It is true that members of the African race were on all land areas of Goddess Mother Earth before any other human race. Therefore, so-called Negroes inhabited North America long before the American Indians and taught the Aztecs of Mexico and the Incas of South America decorum and culture. This is why the head or bust of an African king or god was found in Mexico and other places in the Americas. When Columbus was supposed to have discovered North America in 1492 AD, the Moors were sailing the 7 seas with expertise in time immemorial. The Moors were members of the Ethiopian and Phoenician races who were masters of water and hydraulics and thereby master seamen and master builders. It is written that members of the African race laid out Washington, D.C. and did most of the building. Some members of the Ethiopian race were honorary Indian chiefs when the Pilgrims set foot on Plymouth Rock. The main point is this: black people of Africa and African descent must strive and struggle to break out of the small mental and spiritual circle of ignorance and deception that Caucasians have created for us with their history and religion. And this means that we black people must use our intelligence, which is our sound right reasonability, evidence, and the little we already know in order to reconstruct the past knowledge of ourselves, the knowledge about others, and the positive knowledge about absolute nature for the purpose of liberating our ethnic race from mental, spiritual, and physical captivities. North America was not as much of a wild wilderness as we were taught that it was. It is written that Caucasians scattered and killed off at least 49 million Indians, and many others fled to Canada and Alaska as well as Mexico and Latin America. So it does stand to reason that more than 49 million Indians did live in just teepees and wigwams in North America. Like Aztecs of Mexico, the American Indians had housing systems like the Pueblo housing and other related brick and log projects. The point is this: everywhere Caucasians went and found a flourishing culture and its artifices, they willfully destroyed them after conquering the peoples thereof. The things they did not destroy, they claimed to have created those things themselves. We members of the Ethiopian race must stop thinking in just the small circles of religion and history which Caucasians have created for us as their slaves and servants, if we are to liberate ourselves from adverse forces by help of Nupu and no one. Some have asked, are commercial medicine and care sufficient? And it depends. Each case may be decided on its own merits. There are many operations performed that are not necessary, and the same goes for the medicines prescribed. To put it another way, when a physician gives or prescribes for a patient chemicals for illness, the doctor might also have to prescribe more chemicals to ward off the side effects caused by the previous prescription or prescriptions, and so on. Here is the point: why not give natural nature a chance first? Get yourself an herbal information, such as the herbal booklet entitled Herbally Yours by Penny C. Royal, found in herbal health bookstores, and use the information in it for better health purposes and practices. Herbally Yours quickly tells us what herbs help us with what, if we follow instructions properly. When you are sure that natural herbs will not work sufficiently, then you might have to resort to the doctor or the hospital or both, but for an operation or surgery, always get more than one opinion, because nowadays the medical profession is a commercialized industry. True liberation is the mental, spiritual, and physical separation from enemy forces. You could take a group of captive people who have been under the control of slaveholders for many years, and those slave masters have stripped the oppressed people of everything including their dignity and respect. So just by physically separating the captives from the captors does not fully constitute true liberation, because the captives still have slave mentalities and demonic deceptions. The mental and spiritual parts of the liberation process should come first, because the captive people can then see and understand why there must be a physical separation from enemy forces in order to realize true liberation. The Ethiopians' powers Nupu and their science no one helped black people make their necessary mental and spiritual separation from enemy forces before going on to the physical separation, although Africa is wherever we Africans are in our right mind, and that right mind is Nupu and no one. Caucasians do not talk about liberation, they talk about their freedom only, because they have liberation already from oppression by other ethnic races. However, there are different kinds of liberation from adverse forces such as one-sided racism, hunger, disease, poverty, perversion, etc., and many peoples are in need of these liberations. True freedom by nature does not mean doing what you want to do whenever you wish to do it. Real freedom means having the opportunity and support to do what is right to the best of your knowledge and ability as dictated by your society, and the receipt of equal justice for all under the law. Freedom of speech by nature does not mean that one person should be allowed to slander and vilify another person because he or she wants to, or for a dramatic news story. True freedom by nature does not mean that one person can set upon another person and do him bodily harm because the assailant hates the victim or because the victim is of another ethnic race of people. True freedom is based upon human rights by nature instead of civil rights by man. Negative happenings in the name of freedom are demonism in the name of Satan. The word Libra is short for liberation, and we all are at the beginning of the Libra cycle, which is the first third of the revolutionary cycle. The revolutionary cycle lasts for 18 million years, and the Libra cycle is the first 6 million years of the revolution quarter. The moon cycle was the last 6,000 years of the Libra cycle. The word Libra is the acronym of the phrase, "Let it be remembered always," and the word Libra means liberation, balance, equality, and justice, which is long overdue on Mother Planet Earth. It is true that Nupu and no one will help cause these values and qualities and standards to happen via atmospheric positive changes, positive knowledge, positive understanding, and positive wisdom in the powers of the one supreme being who is absolute infinite eternal nature. Many of us have wondered, did the spirit gods and goddesses of Africa and Asia desert the Ethiopian race? And if so, why? The answer is yes. It is obvious that they eventually deserted the Ethiopian race, otherwise we would not find ourselves in mental, spiritual, and physical captivities. The question, why did the spirit gods and goddesses of Africa and Asia eventually forsake the Ethiopian race, is next, but in order to understand the answer to this question, one must first know something about the SABAT circle of order. The SABAT circle of order is the existence circle of all space, all matter, at all time and endlessness of distance and continuity. When this great circle of time and reasonability is divided into 4 equal quarters by a perpendicular line and a horizontal line, it gives us the 4 seasons of all existence. All existence is absolute nature in general, and absolute nature in general is nature complete. As you face the circle of order, the first quarter of the circle is on the bottom right and is called revolution, or the revolutionary cycle, and it represents the springtime of all existence in powers, standards, qualities, morals, and all values of absolute nature. The second quarter of the circle is on the top right side and is called origination, or the originary cycle, and it represents the summertime of all existence in powers, standards, qualities, ethics, and all values in eternal nature. The third quarter of the existence circle, as the circle turns counterclockwise, is on the top left side and is known as dirigination or the diriginary cycle, and it represents the fall or autumn time of all existence, which is infinite nature. The fourth quarter of the SMAT circle of order is on the bottom left side, and is called evolution or the evolutionary cycle, and it represents the winter time of all existence in powers, standards, qualities, morals, and all values of unique nature. Although the writer missed saying it earlier in this paragraph, the autumn time of almighty nature likewise represents in powers, standards, ethics, qualities, and all values of unique omnipotent nature. Evolution is not improvement in persons, places, and things in the sense that we have been led to believe, but deterioration instead, especially for the Ethiopian race, because the original god-goddess progenitors and ancestors of the Africa race inhabited the top half of the SMAT circle of order in the highest mental, spiritual, and physical conditions and qualities of nature possible for flesh and blood beings. So, when the bottom half of the order circle came as evolution, that meant continuous decline for the descendants of the flesh and blood gods and goddesses who lived in the top half of the circle, and their descendants are the African race. Yet, on the other hand, straight-haired people's ancestors and progenitors did not originate until after evolution began, and these straight-haired people are called mankind, and mankind was slated to incline, rise, in power and authority while Takand, the Ethiopian race, was scheduled to decline, fall, until the end of evolution at rock bottom of the SMAT circle of order. So, you should be able to see and understand by now that the decline and fall of the Ethiopian race were due to the negative powers of evolution and decrease in our sound right reasonability due to the same negative forces of nature. Therefore, there was not much the gods and goddesses of planet Earth could do about the decline and fall of the Ethiopian race, because our downward plight was predestined from the circular activities of the circle of all existence known as the SMAT circle of order. However, and fortunately, it is now time for the mental resurrection, rise, and liberation of the African race, because the SMAT circle of order must keep turning, and we Africans as an ethnic race have reached rock bottom. So there is only one way to go, and that is upward, unless it's time for the universes of infinite eternal nature to start disintegrating. The original prime mover and creator in the one supreme being called absolute nature, who is infinite in all direction and eternal. Eternal, of course, means never had beginning and can never end. The beginning of Genesis of the Caucasian Bible, the King James Version which most Afro-Americans are familiar with, says nothing about God making something from nothing. The idea of making something from nothing is a false assumption and a blind belief. Making something from nothing is impossible for any person or thing to do, no matter how powerful and mysterious he, she, or it might be. Creating definitely does not mean making something from nothing. It means producing or reproducing persons, places, and things from matter or material already existing. People for hundreds and even thousands of years have desired to know more about and have relations with the one supreme being, but did not really know who, where, and what it is. So, this knowledge of almighty nature is your opportunity for enlightenment by way of Nupu and No One, the Ethiopian race ethereal powers and science of all the worlds. There are many gods and goddesses, the sun god, earth god, moon god, underworld god, sea god, serpent god, etc., and their consorts, but only one supreme being. And that is absolute nature, infinite in all directions and eternal. Absolute nature is all space, all matter, and all time and endlessness. Of course, all space is endless nothingness, emptiness, and all vacuum in all directions. All matter is endless somethingness and endless occupancy of space in all directions, and all time is endless continuation of the existence of all space and all matter in all directions. Therefore, the true definition of matter is anything and everything that occupies space. Understanding this true definition of matter, one can readily and easily see that any God who exists has to be a part of absolute nature. Hence, gods do not create nature, nature creates gods and goddesses. This knowledge is correct information, is for the benefit of all human races in general and the Ethiopian race in particular. One major reason why members of the Ethiopian race, all people with genuinely kinky hair on their heads by nature, have not been able to liberate ourselves from enemy forces is the need for our own power base, like our own philosophy, that is, our own spiritual science and our own way of life, also called true culture. The knowledge written here is part of our true culture, and words likewise called the science No One. It is so that the science No One is true culture and vice versa. No One is the Ethiopian race science of all the worlds, and No One is indeed the power base that the black race, the African race, needs for guidance and spiritual power in the name Nupu. True culture, of course, is the way of life and death based upon nature and reason and the laws plus cycles thereof. No One is the words of true culture and the science of sound right reason, and sound right reason is Nupu, the original prime mover and creator of the universes of eternal nature. Sound right reason is the best mind and the original mind of the one supreme being known as omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient nature. Sound right reason is now beginning to emanate from the centers of the true stars called the suns of the universes of absolute nature. You may also call sound right reason, the cosmic reason, and N9 reason. Sound right reason Nupu is called Nu, and spelled Nous, in American English dictionaries and ancient philosophy. Nupu, is the first emanation of the one supreme being and the original prime mover of the universes. Moreover, spirit beings are forms of reason too, and the positive ones among them will help the African race regain our true culture and way of life by nature. However, there are various degrees and various forms of reason and spirit beings. The primary creator, which is same as saying primary grower, is, of course, the way that nature creates is by growth, meaning, by growing persons, places, and things into creation order. One main reason for the disclosure of this vital and correct information is knowledge, is to inform members of the Ethiopian race that it is time to embrace our own spiritual science and our own true culture in general. Members of the African race try to follow everybody else's philosophy and way of life because they do not know our own, or because the evil spells and curses from religion have taken away their reasonability to the point of no return to reason and reality. If a person is intelligent enough, he or she can mentally escape to the world of reason and reality, which is no one, in spite of evil spells and curses from religion. The science no one is the nature of nature in words of sound right reason and the laws and cycles of nature. No one is in the positive nature of the black race. Knowing our identity in nature and by nature and what nature requires of us for survival and well-being, and the practice of this knowledge will indeed in time set us free, mentally, spiritually, and physically. The knowledge of Yaa-Nun, also called Voodooism, used to be a great science of the universe, but down through the negative forces of evolution, Yaa-Nun decreased in reasonability and positiveness to the point of becoming merely a skeleton of itself. So what we Africans by race have to do is put the meat back on the bones, but, instead of putting the meat back on the bones from the left side of the circle of existence, we must put the meat back on the bones from the right side of the existence circle called absolute nature, as the circle goes upward on the right side from rock bottom. Instead of working with spirits from the left side of the SABAT circle of order, let them be from the right side of the same circle. The left side spirits let the African race descend into slavery and Tartarus, hell and Hades. It now takes the right side spirits of the SABAT circle of order to help us Ethiopians by race out of captivity and Tartarus and back to liberation and freedom, our type of freedom in our own type of society, which is no one. Surely, those spirits who will work with Nupu and no one for our liberation from adverse forces are right side spirits. Ethiopians by race cannot put any confidence in the old gods and goddesses, because they let us Africans by race down, although it was predestined to happen, according to the SABAT circle of order.